The METUS Tech Show.
Welcome to the METUS Tech Show, a show for HVAC professionals by HVAC professionals.
The METUS Tech Show.
All right, so you both travel internationally supporting the product in the International Business Unit, the IBU. So what are some of the foods that you've seen? What's your favorite dish that you've seen out there while traveling?
I like in Peru, there is a dish that they call ceviche. Mm-hmm. So that's the one I like the most. I like the way they prepare the ceviche. They use a lot of lime. And basically, it's a raw fish, and they put it on lime, and it cooks on lime, and then it's delicious.
Now, ceviche is raw fish, right? It's raw?
It's raw. But they add lime.
Right, and the lime juices actually cook the fish.
Cook the fish.
Yeah, I never liked ceviche until I went to Cabo, and they had it there, and it was so good, and it was fresh. It was right there. It was really good. It's not something that appealed to me, but I'd try anything once. But once I tasted it, it was delicious.
Delicious.
Gary, what's your favorite dish you've seen out there?
I would say a roti.
Roti. R-O-T-I?
R-O-T-I. It's a West Indian dish. It's real prevalent, Trinidad, Tobago area. It's got a lot of Indian influences, curry spices in it. I guess the best way to describe it would be it's like a burrito, but they have a tortilla and they put some curry spice on it, and then they steam it. And then you can get your choice of fish, conch, beef, chicken. You can get it mild, you can get it spicy, and they put some the beans in there and potatoes, and they roll it all up. And it's a meal in itself. It would really fill you up. I can only eat about half, and I save the other half for later because it's
I could probably eat the whole thing.
Probably.
Yeah. So Steve, make a note. METUS Tech Show goes on the road to Trinidad and someplace.
Yeah, that sounds awesome.
Yeah. Welcome everybody to the METUS Tech Show. We're still at the 2023 Diamond Service Group Conference. Joining us here is Cesar Ceballos and Gary David, area service managers. So we'll start, Cesar, with you. Tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, and how long you've been with the company and so on.
I've been with the company for about 25 years now, and I support the international market. And because I lived in Los Angeles, I support also the Southern California business unit. My background is I'm original from Guatemala, so I got my bachelor degree on basically an AA degree on refrigeration.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
And I started my career in Mitsubishi. It's called Mitsubishi Heavy Industries.
Yeah, the Canadians were talking about that. Yeah.
So Heavy Industries, I supported the reefer or the refrigerator containers for a while. So I traveled with different countries and for about 5 years. And after that, they moved me into HVAC. So I supported all the mini splits, and then after that with the BRF on Mitsubishi Heavy. I stayed there for about 11 years, and then after that, in the USA, they decided to close the business, and because of the Mitsubishi Electric, and then I moved into the Mitsubishi Electric. So now total combined, I can say it's about 25 years in the Mitsubishi, under the Mitsubishi umbrella.
Oh, I didn't realize you were here that long.
Yeah, so about 20, 25 years ago, when you got a mini split, it could be Mitsubishi Electric or Mitsubishi Heavy industries. They were different.
Different.
Yeah, I remember working on a few of those.
Yeah, and then it's basically the commercial type that in Mitsubishi we call the PAC,
right?
The professional series, right, on both sides, on Mitsubishi Electric and on Mitsubishi Heavy Industries. Very similar products, but two different.
Yeah,
and it was different distributors, and there was different manuals, and it was very confusing.
Exactly,
back in the day when I first got into mini splits, it was confusing.
And living in Los Angeles, I can still see those systems working, both of them.
And do they have wood grain on the indoor
Wood
units?
grain? Yes, correct. That's correct.
Fake wood.
Very tough, very
And
robust.
the outdoor units look like a typical split system condenser, the
Yeah.
pug
The R22.
pug units,
Yeah,
right?
pug
unit.
units. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
We still have being in LA, I support a very important customer, which is Sony Pictures, and
Yeah, you told me about that.
LAUSD, Los Angeles School District. They use a lot of those units, and then the only reason they change those systems is because they're getting old, and
Yeah.
they are R22 refrigerant, so they have to change it to the 410A refrigerant.
It's an antique.
Antique system.
All right. Okay. So, Gary, what say you?
I've been with Mitsubishi for 7 years now. Prior to coming here, I was involved with Mitsubishi. I started working on the Mitsubishi product probably around 2003, 2004. I was just getting ready to do the switch over from 22 to 410A. I was in the distributor section of Mitsubishi as far as being a DSG person in the Caribbean. Made a move to Grand Cayman. It was brief because Hurricane Ivan went through in 2004 and just devastated the whole island.
Wow.
My wife was like, we're not staying. I was like, wait a minute. It's an island. It's in the ocean. She said, we'll find another one. And we did. We went to the U.S. Virgin Islands, and I connected with a lot of you guys know Wes Tester.
Yeah.
And he was on a different island, but we built a relationship, and I was working for a company that did all Mitsubishi. And that went fantastic from 2005-ish up to 2016. Well, my wife got tired of the island life type of thing. And
That must have
said,
been horrible with sunshine and warmth every day and ocean.
endless summer.
Yeah.
I think there was a 12-degree swing between summer and winter.
That's awful.
I know.
Yeah.
Somebody had to do it.
Yeah.
So
Tough duty.
Daryl Smith used to come down. Maroda Herrera, Ray Benz, and those came down. Paul Gordias came down when his picture used to be on the front of the book, if you remember back
Yeah,
then.
yeah. I still got that book.
And did training for us, DSB, and just a different, we didn't get a whole lot of support back then, like we were doing now, but she got tired of the island. I reached out to Daryl and found out there was an opening position for Cincinnati market, which is where I'm out of now. And I moved back up in March of 2016, and I came on board here in April 2016. So I cover Ohio, Kentucky, Indiana, and West Virginia. That's my DSG area. And then I do probably 8 or 9 islands down in the Caribbean for the internationals.
There's a little bit more than a 12-degree swing,
Yeah.
in that area. So,
But it's nice. You get to go back and warm up a little bit like an iguana, get your blood, and then you come back and freeze your butt off.
yeah. So when you're living in paradise and your wife says, we're moving, and you said, okay,
Pretty much.
yeah, all right. I don't blame you.
You would do the same.
Of course I would.
Yeah.
No, but she doesn't listen to the show, so I can say that. All right. Well, thank you, guys. So you're here at the conference, and you guys were teaching what class?
The new Smart Multi.
Yeah?
Yeah, the Smart Multi. It used to be the MXC series with the branch boxes, or the S series with indoor unit city
Yeah.
multi-type
Yeah, the S series, which would go by the Pumi.
by the Pumi, and now it's called the Smart Multi.
So
The
it's
same-
consolidated, right?
Consolidated in only one outdoor unit.
Yep.
So no more MXZ, no more Pumi or S series. It's just the Smart Multi. All right.
An interesting thing about that is they were always the same. They were made in the same factory. They were the exact same units.
Right.
So we had them separated based on the indoor connection.
Right.
So now we've consolidated that so we can have
Yeah, it makes
that
sense.
combination.
Yeah, it makes sense for inventory
Right.
control, right? So the boards may be a little different. So what are some of the main differences? Let's stick with what's the difference between the Pumi and the Smart Multi first. Let's talk about those. What are some of the things the contractor needs to know?
Well, if you put in Pumi units, nothing really changed. You do the same piping, same tees, just like a regular city multi-system. The heads, all the city multi-heads are compatible with it.
Yep.
No changes on the indoor sections. They're all anything that's driven through the MNet for our city multi side works fantastic with
Yeah.
the.
So if you know the commercial units, they have the metering device in them already.
Correct.
So no branch controllers needed, just headers and T's. So
Headers and
nothing's
Ts.
changed, but definitely a different unit. Efficiency's improved.
Absolutely. They've also improved the capacity control, so we can at least lower that compressor speed down, so we can have, when it's a low load, and we don't have that SV1 bypassing and taking the refrigerant, dumping it back in.
Yeah. I noticed one difference with the Smart Multi commercial unit, and it may be the same on the residential side. And Gary, you probably know this, but when you start the unit up, the condenser fan motors are pulsing. So that's something a little different that we weren't used to in the past. The condenser fan motors will sit there at the initial, when it initially starts up for the first 14 minutes, 15 minutes maybe, the condenser fan motors will pulse, and then they'll go into normal operation.
You are correct. So if you remember the old units, they would just start up and go. They have now, with the new software and the technology, we put in initial mode. So if you have seen initial mode on the City Multi product, it's the same process. It's got to go through. It wants to check the system, make sure everything's operational before it takes off and runs. It clamps down on some of the LEVs, and the outdoor unit starts to run slow, and then you get a little more noise, but it's just checking itself. And you will see actually in maintenance tool now where it says warm up. So it's warming itself up, if you will.
Good to know.
Or initial. They've changed it to ordinary, but you don't see initial like in maintenance tool when you're seeing that first startup.
And when it's in warm mode, you see the electronic expansion valve, we call LEVs, are minimum position on all of the zone, on all of the indoor units. And you can monitor this through our maintenance tool,
Software, yeah.
Software.
Yep.
Okay, so let's talk about the differences now. So I can order a Smart Multi with a branch box, and I have to use M&P series indoor units, or I can order the Smart Multi without the branch box, and like you said, Gary, it's T's or headers, and I have to use City Multi indoor units, right? Is there anything else I need to do? I need to know whether I'm going to use a branch box or not a branch box?
When you have a branch box, there is a dip switch at the outdoor unit that you have to turn on, and it's called SW2-5. It must be turned on.
Yes.
At the outdoor unit.
Really important.
Really important.
Yeah. And how does it come from the factory?
It comes off from the factory. That's why you have to turn it on. When you do the installation at the field.
And keep in mind, if you don't turn that switch on, the system may look like it's running just fine, but it'll run until it doesn't, right? Until you start having issues.
That's correct.
So SW2-5 in the outdoor unit, if you put a branch box on it, that goes on.
That goes on.
If you're going to put City Multi heads on, you leave it alone.
Leave it alone.
Setting.
So let's talk about the residential side and addressing. I taught a class in Boston. This blew my mind. I taught a class in Boston not too long ago. I had 15 students, and I'd say about 8 or 9 of them said, and they were looking around at each other, and they were like, I have never addressed any residential Smart Multi system.
Equipment.
And I'm like, not even the dip switches for the ports on the branch box.
Oh, boy.
I'm like, how's this system running? And I had to explain to them, look, it'll run when you flip that disconnect, but then you're going to start experiencing issues with the indoor units. Customer may not realize it, and you're going to get a call back, right? And I noticed this with the PAA connected to a Smart Multi branch box. If you do not address that system, the furnace comes right on, and that heat pump won't run. It doesn't recognize it. So addressing is just so important on the residential side.
So let's talk about that, because if you don't address anything and you put a branch box on it, it can run for days, weeks, months, or even years without a problem, and then one day it becomes an issue. So it's important to address them.
Yeah.
Right? And if you're listening and you've installed one of these, don't necessarily go back and make appointments to address them, but if you're going there for maintenance or for a service call, address them at that time.
Yeah.
So can you guys quickly go through the addressing process for, I'm using a Smart Multi with a branch box.
Sure. I think something to know is when it comes from the factory, the outdoor unit is really already addressed because our number range for our outdoor is 51 to 100. Well, it's at 00, which thinks it's at 100. So it really has an outdoor address. That's not much as important as the branch box having a number. And especially if you're doing 2 branch boxes, you have to let it know what it's actually connected to. Now, the older branch box, I think it was the 51, before they came with the 52, no problem, you have it on. But I've seen now in the 52 box, if you don't set SW1, you get no power at S1, S2, and S3.
Oh.
So you have to flip on those dip switches depending on the port you're
So they're not going to get away with walking away on that job.
Not anymore.
Not anymore.
Correct.
Okay.
Which in a way is good.
Yeah, it's super important to set the address on the branch box, outdoor unit, and also set the address of the ports.
Okay, so if I have an outdoor unit, it's addressed at 00 from the factory, what do I have to do to the branch box to have that system properly addressed?
So we follow the rules of lowest connected plus 50. So you should have that outdoor at 51 when your first branch box at 1.
And be careful with your branch box because it could be mounted upside down.
Correct.
That's perfectly an acceptable installation,
Yes.
right? So if it's mounted upside down, your circuit board's upside down and your rotary dials are upside down. So when you're standing on a ladder facing these knobs, take a look at how that branch box is mounted and make sure that, you may be addressing that branch box at 01 and it's actually 10. So I tell guys in class all the time, how do we make it easier to address? I tell them, address the branch box at 11, address the outdoor unit at 61. Doesn't matter which way the branch box is, it's always 11, right? But basically all the indoor units on the residential side auto-address themselves when we flip that SW1 dip switch. Basically, whatever the branch box address is, it'll auto-address according to that number. So if it's 01, first indoor unit is 01, and then 02, 03, up from there. And we can see that with maintenance tool. When we hook maintenance tool up, we can see those auto addresses on the indoor units.
Yeah.
Something else, too, on the when you say about setting that address, SW1 or SU1 or 11, 11 and 12 is our two
Right.
10s and our 1s digit.
Okay.
I say to guys, if it ends in a 1, it's the 1s digit. Easy to remember.
It's a great way to remember it. All right, so let's move on to commercial addressing, different animal. Right now, the indoor units have rotary dials on them. And it's basically they have 3 rotary dials. One we're ignoring because that is our port assignment dial. Comes from the factory at 0, should. And I've never seen one come from the factory not at 0, but we're leaving that alone.
Not touching it.
It's going to stay at 0 because we're not using a branch controller that we need to port. So we're leaving that one alone. Then we have the address dials in the indoor unit that we need to address. And again, lowest address, we can start with any address as long as we stay within the 1 to 50 range for an indoor unit. Makes sense, right? And then we're going to address the outdoor units according to 50 plus that lowest number. So if it's 01 for the lowest unit, 51 on the outdoor unit. All right, and that has to be addressed on the commercial side.
Absolutely.
That's correct.
And one other thing a lot of guys do, and it's not necessary, is your MNet connection coming from that outdoor unit does not have to go to number 1. It could go to start at 2, could start at 5, as long as it's a complete daisy chain and we're not spidering off the MNet. You can address them. However, the MNet sees everything on there.
Right. The MNet, let's just go to the closest unit first and then the next closest and so on with our daisy chain. Let's not worry about address.
Yeah,
That's common practice, though. It always, the first one we hit, but we could come back and hit another one just because we have less wire to run to get to the one we want to call number 3, for example. So
yeah, that's a great point. So we don't have to waste wire. Wire's expensive, so we want to keep our wire lengths down as well. So we can hit. That's a great point. Hit any address, any indoor unit closest to the outdoor unit. So let's talk about MNet for a second, and let's go back to the residential unit. So where does our MNet start and where does our MNet end on the residential side?
It starts at the outdoor unit, and then it's terminal block. It's called TV3.
Yep.
And it goes to the indoor units, daisy change, and then we have a terminal block that is called TV5. And
Okay, so that's the commercial units.
on the commercial
Yeah,
unit.
yeah.
On the commercial unit.
About the residential.
Or residential.
So residential a little different. We're stopping at the branch box.
At the branch
Right.
box. The
Yeah.
branch box.
So Mnet wire should be 16.2 stranded shielded. And we just did an episode with Vincent Patty, and he's got a song. We're not going to sing it.
No, we
But it's on one of our episodes. He came up with a little song to keep, get that burned into your brain. 16.2 stranded shielded wire is what you need to use. You can't use 16.3, 16.4, and not use the extra conductors because they turn into antennas.
Can't use thermostat wire. It's got to be stranded,
Lamb cord.
shielded, two conductor. That's it.
Yeah.
Lamb cord doesn't work either.
Yeah, no. Maybe for a little bit.
So that shield wire is actually physically grounded at the outdoor unit TB3. There's actually a little ground wire there, right?
That is a change on the Smart Multi because when we had the Pumis and we had the MXZs, they used to, the little bag or the knee pad or the suction
The
minute.
thing that everyone throws out. That,
Exactly.
The one that says this must stay with the equipment, and everyone throws it out.
No, I got to know.
But that
I got to
had-
know, why did they put that in the bag and not just ship it with the
I
unit?
agree. So the older style, we had two jumpers in the bag, and those were for the S terminals to ground them for TB3 and TB7. If you notice now, there's only one that they are grounding now the S terminal on TB3 from the factory.
I noticed that in my room. Yeah, when I just installed the Smart Multi maybe 6 months ago, 4 or 5 months ago, whatever it was. But yeah, I noticed the wire came with it. But do you know the secret behind putting them in the bag? Why would we do that?
There is some grounding rules in Japan. I don't think they follow what we have here. They ground them at the indoor instead of at the outdoor.
Well, and that's a good point. It has to be grounded only at one.
Only one
don't
location.
You don't want to ground the S terminal at the outdoor unit and the indoor unit. You just want one location or the
It
other.
defeats the purpose.
And that's why they don't install it, because they don't want you to ground it in more than one place. That's the important.
Man, that
That's
just blew my
important.
mind. I've been here 6 years. I've been dying to know why, and that makes perfect
You
sense.
should have asked me.
And, and in the inside, it's just a terminal block. It doesn't go to anything. You have to physically
Yeah.
have that to a
I
ground.
tell the students that's just a dummy terminal, and there's no connection to. So let's take the residential branch box unit for example. You're running it, and it's grounded at the outdoor unit with that jumper, but when you land that wire on shield, there's nothing on that terminal to reference ground. It's just a dummy terminal.
I find guys will not even put it on there because they think it's tied to something, but they just wire nut twist them all together all the way down the line. I said, why didn't you just put it on the S terminal? Well, we didn't want to ground it here.
Yeah, that's
they
a
were
junction
thinking
point,
about the
right?
ground.
There's nothing. It's just, you know what? It basically, it's a wire nut. By putting it on the S terminal, it acts just like a wire nut. It's just easier to do it.
Yeah, so 29 volts for MNet, and it's a steady voltage. There's no pulsing voltage on the MNet. It's a communicating voltage, but it's a steady, you should see with your meter on DC, roughly 29 volts, right? And just to review, we're on the residential side, we're leaving TB3, and we're ending at the branch box with MNet. From the branch box to the indoor units, we're using basic S1, S2, S3 to all the indoor units.
That is correct.
Whereas the commercial side, all of the indoor units are MNet compatible, no branch box. We're leaving TB3, and we're following a straight daisy chain, no spider webbing, no T-tapping or anything. You want to have a true daisy chain across all the equipment.
But they also need power, where our MMPs do not need to have a power circuit to run the air handler.
Good point. Yeah. So we need to separately power all the indoor units with 208 single phase.
And another interesting thing people don't know about with the MNet, very rarely will we ever sell an MNet board. People don't know this, but inside the MNet board, it's got a built-in shunt circuit. So if there was a short across the MNet, it shunts it to 0 volts.
Yeah, yeah.
And I had a guy order an MNet board, and he says, you sent me a broken MNet board. This one, too, has 0 volts at it. So we pulled the wires off of TB3, power cycled it.
And there's a voltage
And the voltage
again.
came right
it
back.
pops right back. Yeah, so that's important too. So you had a construction site, or maybe something down the road where they drive a screw into the MNet and short it out, you could see 0 volts at the MNet board, and it doesn't mean the MNet board's bad. Pull your wires off of TB3 and then check TB3 terminal again, and you'll see that voltage return. So that's good point. MNet shorts will do some weird things, and it shunts to ground. And it's also a great bug in class.
So we're starting up a unit. Right? Is there anything special we need to know about starting this up? We already talked about whether or not we're using a branch box and the dip switch we have to flip if we're using a branch box. But is there anything else we need to know before we start it up? And
I think good practice on City Multi and MMP heads when you're using the Smart Multi is we should start up one unit at a time. I see a lot of guys go out, they put it in test run, and all the units come on. We should do one at a time, to make sure we're not cross-wired.
Or cross-pipe. Which could be the same thing, only different.
That's a great point. I talk about that with the ported as well, because you could turn all the units on, not know anything is crossed as far as the wiring side, and walk away from that job, and the customer's not going to have control of certain units. They're going to turn one unit on, and another unit's going to come on in the house when they're running separate units. So one at a time, and that's really important.
And before starting the unit, it's so important to energize the outdoor unit at least 12 hours before starting the unit.
Especially in colder climates. But always, it's always a good practice.
It's very important. Otherwise, it's going to go into the initial mode for a longer time.
Yeah.
When you do the startup for the first time.
Yeah, and you could also have overcurrent situations if the compressor's stacked with liquid, and you go and fire that off on a 10-degree day, let's say, and you didn't run your preheat, and that preheat does take 12 hours because it's not like a typical strap type heater on a compressor or a well type heater on a compressor like you normally see on unitary equipment. We're sending wattage through the windings of that compressor, basically turning the compressor into a light bulb. But it's a slow process to warm that compressor up, and that takes 12 hours. Good point, Cesar.
Right. Yeah, that oil's thick when it's cold.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if it's cold, and this is a different topic, but if it's cold and it doesn't start, and you go to ohm out a compressor, you're going to get a very low reading, and you may falsely condemn a compressor.
Yeah. It'll show the ground.
It's got liquid back there. It's full of liquid.
Yeah.
Right?
And so let's talk about, we talked about the Smart Multi single-phase 208 units, available up to 5 tons. We're getting ready to release our 6, 8, and 10-ton models. This is huge. But they're 3-phase units. So more and more, and I've been out of the field for a while, but a lot of contractors that I talk to, they're working on large houses that have 3 phases. Pretty common now to see a house with 3-phase feed to that house.
Common, yeah.
Yeah, so we're trying to tap that market, and with the 6, 8, and 10-ton systems, can you talk a little bit about that, either Gary or Cesar?
I think if you're familiar with the single-phase unit, you have no problem working on the 3-phase unit.
Okay.
Looking at it electrically, right? So with the 3-phase unit, and there was some rumor you could run it off of 2 legs. That is not true. And the reason it's not true is because we steal the CNAC, the power that runs our bypass solenoids, our reversing valve, off of legs 1 and 3.
Okay.
Then we power our MNet board, which is a larger MNet board, off of legs 2 and 3 to get our 208, 230. Once that 3-phase power is at the rectification circuit, we're changing it over to DC. The rest is just like a single-phase unit. That's the only part that is the 3-phase section, if you will. The control board, your 52C, your CNDC, all those are going to be familiar to guys. They did move the MNet board from behind the control panel to right above the control panel. It's a bigger, more robust board because we can put up to 30 indoor heads on the 6, 8, and 10.
Wow, that's impressive.
12 on the other one.
Yeah. So as far as the single phase and 3-phase, once I check incoming power, everything else is the same.
Absolutely.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Now, you said the MNet board on the 3-phase is above the control board?
Yes.
Because it's below the control board on the smaller units.
Correct.
Okay.
And it's almost as wide as the control board. It's that big.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but the previous MXZs before the Smart Multi, we didn't have an MNet board. It was built into the control board? Or was there an MNet board in there?
Oh, we always had an
always
MDET
had
board,
one,
but
yeah.
it's behind.
It was always hidden back there. Okay. Yeah. So now you can actually see it. When you take out that outside panel, it's exposed.
Above, and then exposed, and you can see all the controllers, all the
boards.
all the boards.
And beautiful.
And I believe, based on what I've seen on the dip switches, that control board for the 6, 8, and 10 ton is going to be the same across them. And it's just a matter of changing the capacity on the dip switches for the control board to tell it it's a 6, 8, or 10 ton, especially when you're replacing the board.
And this is a good time to remind people, if you're replacing a board for whatever reason, make sure the dip switches on the board you're putting in, just real quick, match them to the one you're taking out, because those dip switches tell a lot of things. It tells it what size it is. Because we can use the same board on multiple sizes, and you want to make sure that you match those dip switches on the new one before you put it in, because I've seen that happen quite a bit too. Guys don't do that.
Yeah, and even if you're on a service call and you're having some issues that you can't explain, always start from scratch. Go back to the basics. Pull out the manual and make sure your dip switches are set to the factory settings the way they were set before. You never know who was on that job before, and there are some mini dip switches on the Smart Multi that someone could have touched. And I've seen it where you can flip a dip switch and it can change the operation of the unit drastically.
Yes.
So definitely check that.
My pet peeve is, if you're going to play with the dip switches, take your phone out, take a picture of it, because you're going to always go back to where you started from, because you start flipping them, you're going to forget which one.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Have
absolutely.
a plan. Have a plan on what you're going to be changing, if anything. Right.
And speaking of dip switches, before we say goodbye, Gary, you and I were talking before, and you were talking about startup. And we were talking about SW5-3. You just want to cover that real quick?
5-3, what that does is it allows you to fix the position. So if you've worked on City Multi equipment with your maintenance tool, you can go into the menu and you can set the LEV at a certain fixed position, if you will, to see if you're getting refrigerant flow to that head. There's also a fixed release button in maintenance tool that you can release that LEV back to normal operation. The Smart Multi, and this is always true on the Pumi units as well, but on the Smart Multi, there is a dip switch. It's 5-3 that allows it to hold the position. So you set it at that position, it locks it in from maintenance tool, and then it freezes. You cannot hit release on maintenance tool and take it off. You have to physically turn that dip switch back off to release the position for that particular LEV.
Oh, so that would drive me crazy if I didn't know that, and I set the LEV and it goes back.
At the next minute that maintenance tool refreshes, it goes back to its original position.
Oh yeah, that would be so aggravating. Like, what is going on here? So wow, that's good to know for the startups and maintenance tool and so on, or even diagnosing.
Guys, this has been great. I just want to point out we're starting to release our 2-day Smart Multi classes, and it'll definitely be in full swing for 2024. It's a 2-day installation, startup, and service class. It involves the residential Smart Multi and the commercial Smart Multi with the 6, 8, and ton systems built in. And you can sign up for classes at MitsubishiComfort.com. Go to 4 Pros and go to resources and then training, and you can check our calendar and sign up for classes at one of our 10 training centers across the country.
Yeah. And if you have any questions or ideas, or, we probably at some point might do a second show on this to get in more details. But if there's something you want us to talk about, email us at metustechshow@hvac.mea.com. And guys, real quick, before we go, the contractors out there, who do you want them to call? What number do you want them to call if they have issues, or who do you want them to call if they have issues and questions?
They should be contacting their DSG.
And that's why we're here at the DSG conference, right? So contact your local DSG, your Diamond Service Group member, where you bought the equipment, and they're there to help you. And they know how to get a hold of Gary and Cesar if they need to.
And something else too, and it still blows my mind that how many people don't know about mylinkdrive.com. I have students come to class and they're like, I've never heard of it. And I'll tell you, if you work on Mitsubishi equipment, mylinkdrive.com is where you want to go for service manuals, for installation manuals, parts manuals, engineering manuals, submittals, app notes, tech tip videos. We'll show you how to pull a blow wheel out of a wall unit in minutes, right?
Yeah.
So mylinkdrive.com, check out the Smart Multi.
There's tech tip videos there that are good.
Yeah.
And basically every manual that we print for every single piece of equipment we manufacture, it's there. Even some of the old stuff. You can even see some of the older stuff.
Yeah, we have
plug
our
units.
22 equipment still on there. So if you have an old piece of equipment like Cesar was talking about, it's got some wood grain on it, we got a manual on it.
Send us a picture. If you've got an old R22 unit, please send us a picture.
I will. And something also from the link drive that people don't know, we also have one section that is called App Notes.
Yes.
So something that is not on the manual, and we have very good information for commercial and residential, and also
Controls.
applications, and also for controls. So check on the App Notes.
Yeah, so that's a great point, Cesar. So if you, and I'm just going to give an example. If you need to bury refrigerant lines, well, guess what? We have an app note on how we want you to do that.
Yeah.
And
if you're in Denver in high altitude, there's a high altitude app note as well.
Yeah.
See, a lot of good information right there.
Something else in the Caribbean, Mexico region, or non-UL area, right?
yeah.
So we also have a link drive that covers those types of units.
yeah, that's actually the opening page on my link drive. So you can click on US or click on Latin America.
Latin America.
Yeah.
It's different because the equipment is totally different than what we see in the U.S. So,
But we have also another one that is called non-UL, mylinkdrive.com.
Okay,
All right.
great
Guys,
to know.
thank you both
Thank you for
taking
having us.
time out of your busy day. So, Gary, I want to go back to the conch thing you mentioned. What is that? Tell me a little. I'm interested. I actually had conch soup before, but I don't have no idea what it is.
a conch? It's
Yes.
that
Is it
horn
conch
that
or
they blow.
conch?
Conch.
Conch,
The
not
horn.
conch.
that you-
Okay. Yes.
So the queen conch,
Yeah.
big in the Bahamas, big in Turks and Caicos, huge. I mean, they're all over the beaches. So the
It's a
guys
shell.
go out to
Is it just a
fishermen.
shell?
It's a slug.
A slug.
Right? And to get it out of the shell, you always notice on the conch, it's the one with the really pink, shiny.
Yeah, yeah.
So it cleans itself off. It looks like a big snail. The easiest way to describe it, but it's a sea snail. So if you look on the back of the shells, you'll see a cut mark where they cut the shell.
Yeah.
That breaks the vacuum so they can pull the meat out of it.
Get out.
And then you cut it up, and you can get it conch fritters. Those are
I like the word fritter. If it ends in fritter, I'm going to eat it.
That's a deep fried.
to be good.
It's really
Deep
good.
fry.
I found one in Jamaica snorkeling, and I brought it to one of the guys, and he took a stick, sharpened it, and poked a hole in the back of the conch,
Yep.
and the slug fell right out.
Wow.
And then he cooked it.
Yeah,
Right in
because
front of me.
It's
It was amazing.
It's vacuum sucked in there, and that's the
And
only
you
way
break-
you can
break
get it
that
out.
vacuum.
You break the vacuum, and they come right out. And there's all kinds of conch chowder, like clam chowder, conch chowder. They got conch. They can take conch and they put it with the breading, and they make the fritters like little ball. Excellent.
Sometimes I wonder who was the first person to eat certain foods. Like somebody looked at a lobster one day. The first person must have said, I'm going to try cooking this and eating it. Somebody looked at this big shell with a slug in it and said, I wonder what this tastes like. It always intrigued me.
I think it's got the same consistency as calamari. And calamari,
I love
like that. That's what it is.
Don't overcook it.
Yeah, that's right.
Make it rubbery.
That's it. All right, guys, thanks again.
From Mexico.